timing of this, the relevance of when this has happened, in the context of this summit that's going to happen with Xi?
Absolutely. Victor, thanks so much for having me on again. With regards to the situation in Ukraine itself, over the past number of days, this is only the second or third night where we've had a series of hundreds of these drones being sent from Russia to Ukraine. The thing that I noted most specifically about Russia's attack on Ukraine the past week or so is how it's not focused on military targets from the looks of it more than anything, in contrast to what Ukraine has been doing over the past series of weeks, which has been targeting Russia's ability to generate oil and to be able to sell it on the black market. There's been about a dozen or so oil and gas refinery locations in Russia that Ukraine has attacked, and so the contrast between the two strategies between the two countries really is notable. So it's unclear what exactly Russia is trying to achieve at this point, other than just create sheer terror in Ukraine.
Now let's talk about this summit. President Putin, President Xi. Ivan pointed out that Xi is trying to stake his claim as the reliable alternative to a chaotic approach from President Trump. But fill out the picture of what the goal is and add Narendra Modi to that equation as well.
Mm. Well, your previous report was, I think, 100% spot on in that the United States has spent decades, especially since the end of the Cold War, trying to cultivate a relationship with India itself. Of course, there's a lot of problems with trying to create that relationship, not least of which is the practical implications of the Indian government, and is rather difficult to work with just based off of how it's organized itself. But from moving on from there alone, the fact that President Putin is relying so heavily on President Xi Jinping of China is really rather a product of our time more than anything. Certainly Ukraine's going to be on the topic between the two leaders themselves, but more than anything, it's about the interdependence of their two economies and how Russia has become very dependent on the Chinese market more than anything to help prop it up with its war in Ukraine. Bringing in India into that as well, of course, India has been one of the largest buyers of Russian oil and gas. So the fact that the Ukrainians themselves are trying to interrupt that and to try and make it far more expensive for India to try and purchase oil from Russia and try to decrease the supply that's there is certainly going to play a role. One thing that I actually really noticed in all of this, more than anything, is the fact that President Putin's going to be there for all 4 days. That's really unusual for him. Usually he just drops right in, does what he needs to do, and leaves. So the fact that he's there for all 4 days shows how much time and effort he's investing in this more than anything.
All right, we'll look for headlines out of this summit. Matthew Shoemaker, thank you so much for being with me this morning.
Have I got news for you? Next Saturday at 9 on CNN.
I wish I wasn't afraid to smile.
This is crazy in what they're doing pertaining to regrouping the alliances. And it just goes to show you what the Reagans and the Bushes thought that they was going to be able to do underhandedly trying to blindside the truth in response to biblical Bible prophecy. It only shows you what type of horror, what type of mistake that was, that I, Dennis James Jackson, tried so desperately after Desert Storm had broken out in identifying that the American people had went to war with the wrong people over in the Middle East. Now, I don't know where all this is going to go, and if the truth be known, other than it being ugly and other than it costing human lives, casualties, fatalities, I don't know where all this is going to go, but I do know this. Proof is in the pudding regarding a thought that began right here in Northwest Tennessee that decided that they wasn't going to support the very person that was spearheading peace, love, grace, mercy, and yes, the things in Revelations and Daniel that correspond with the whole Bible and not just bits and pieces of it, because I've always been taught you don't cherry pick whenever it comes to the things that you either want to believe or the things that you choose to believe. You either are all in or you're not in at all pertaining to the Holy Scriptures. And for this to have backfired on the American people this way, the people that stands at fault is the people that could had initiated some sort of movement with the Windmill Ministries missions, but chose not to. So from this moment on, whatever befalls upon to our great nation, or whatever befalls upon to other nations, I want those beginning in Kenton, Tennessee, to recognize this, that they have brought this upon the world. The white squirrel little town called Kenton, Tennessee is solely responsible for the clashes and the disagreements, and now the realignment of various alignments is that is now being projected by China of the New World Order. We have been somewhat in control in the past 30 years since the Cold War had ended, but it was in false pretenses. It was not pertaining to the trueness of biblical Bible prophecy. Come Tuesday, I'm going to bury my only child at the age of 46, Nicholas James Jackson. That I truly believe his eyes had been opened, not by me, but by God and by the holy, precious Holy Spirit, pertaining to his persistenceness in wanting to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help him God. I just pray that my son's spirit, his soul, will lay at rest, and that people will recognize their wrongs and their faults and their shortcomings, beginning right here in Weakley and Obion County, Tennessee. And I know don't nobody like to be the bad news bearer. I don't like to bring this bad news pertaining to these failures, but whenever you can see stuff brewing over the horizon that even I myself tried desperately in telling President Biden at the time that he was not dealing with goat herders, but he was dealing with a vicious savagery type of